Chapter 30, Section 3, Living with Nuclear Anxiety. A stark white flash enveloped their world. Randy felt the heat on his neck. Peyton cried out and covered her face with her hands. In the southwest, in the direction of Tampa, St. Petersburg, and Sarasota, another unnatural sun was born, much larger and infinitely fiercer than the sun in the east. Peyton screamed, I can't see, Mommy, Mommy, where are you? Pat Frank, Alas, Babylon, 1959. Like many novels written in the 1950s, Pat Frank's Alas, Babylon portrayed a world engulfed in World War III, an imagined conflict fought with weapons powerful enough to destroy all life on Earth. The Perils and Promise of the Atomic Age. Books like Alas, Babylon explored the perils of the atomic age. During these early Cold War years, the destruction caused by the atomic bomb's drop on Japan remained fresh in the Americans' minds. People were terrified to think of such bombs raining down on American cities, yet by 1949, such an attack seemed all too possible. Despite such fears, the promise of atomic power also excited Americans. The media ran glowing stories predicting atomic-powered cars, ships, airplanes, and power plants. One newspaper reported, atoms in an amount of matter spread out the size of a fingernail, say the scientists, could supply sufficient energy to propel an ocean liner across the sea and back. An automobile with a microscopic amount of matter from which atomic energy could be released could be driven around for a lifetime, if it did not wear out. Never stopped at a gas station. Milwaukee Journal, August 7th, 1945. Businesses jumped on the atomic bandwagon as well. The bar at the Washington Press Club marked the arrival of the atomic age with the atomic cocktail. Department stores advertised atomic sales. Musicians recorded songs with titles like Atomic Buster and Atom Polka. A French fashion designer named his new two-piece bathing suit the Bikini in honor of the testing of an atomic bomb on Bikini Atoll in the Central Pacific. In the 1950s, atomic bomb tests moved to the Nevada desert. In Las Vegas, the Chamber of Commerce promoted atomic tourism, publishing a schedule of tests and the best places to view them. Armed with atomic lunchboxes, tourists hoping to feel and see an atomic bomb's power flocked as close to ground zero, the point of a bomb's impact, as the government allowed. Creating a civil defense system. As the atomic arms race took off, the federal government began planning for civil defense, the organization and training of citizens to work with the armed forces and emergency services during a war or natural disaster. In 1951, Congress established the Federal Civil Defense Administration, FCDA. The head of FCDA warned Americans that the backyard may be the next front line. The agency distributed millions of civil defense manuals to help people prepare for a nuclear attack. These publications made it clear that Americans could not rely on the military to protect them from a surprise attack. People would have to prepare to protect themselves as best they could. Civil defense preparedness soon became part of daily life. Many communities set up bomb shelters in public buildings, stocked with emergency food and water supplies. These shelters offered people refuge during an attack. Across the country, tests of warning sirens and emergency radio stations were carried out every week. Civil defense workers called block wardens trained their neighbors on how to fight fires and provide first aid after an attack. Children also took part in civil defense training. The FCDA developed a film and booklet featuring a character called Bert the Turtle, who taught children how to survive an atomic explosion. Bert led the children through duck and cover drills to prepare them for how to react if they ever heard an emergency siren. Soon, families took preparedness a step further by burying an underground shelter in their backyard. Several companies sold prefabricated fallout shelters for single-family use. The shelters were designed to shield families not only from an atomic explosion, but also from the radioactive dust that falls out of the sky afterward. Authorities advised families to remain sealed in their fallout shelters for several weeks after an attack to let this toxic dust settle. Preparedness versus peace. These early civil defense preparations were based on the expected impact of an atomic bomb attack. By the mid-1950s, the development of far more powerful H-bombs raised questions about the effectiveness of such methods. Faced with this new threat, the FCDA concluded that the only practical way to protect large numbers of people during the attack was to evacuate them from target cities. It's much better to get people out, even if the process you may kill some, said civil defense planner, than to have millions of Americans just stay there and be killed. The FCDA created a large-scale civil defense drill called Operation Alert to test how quickly cities could be evacuated. On June 15, 1955, sirens began to wail across the country. The results were mixed. Some people ducked into bomb shelters, others headed out of town. Many paid little or no attention to the drill. Had the attack been real, observed the New York Times in an editorial, millions of people would have died. The editorial concluded that this demonstration gives new emphasis to President Eisenhower's dictum that war no longer presents the possibility of victory or defeat, but only varying degrees of destruction, and that there is no substitute for a just and lasting peace. New York Times, June 16, 1955. The FCDA repeated Operation Alert drills throughout the 1950s. However, for a growing number of Americans, the drills became an opportunity to speak out against the nuclear arms race. In 1960, a group of young mothers in New York City organized hundreds of protesters around this simple idea: peace is the only defense against nuclear war.